there is clarity about what the national government should not be doing. And therefore, the basis of those legal notices that I've just mentioned, the county governments are empowered to seize what are their functions at law. There's no doubt about it. And some of the county governments are doing it, except we have also told them to go through, because also we don't want any disruption of what is going on at the moment. So we are facilitating conversations between national and county governments about the process by which, they are doing it. We should not do it like, the historical African, at least in where I came from, people met in the bush and the two people from different regions did a tug of war for a woman to get married. We don't want it that way. We want it to be systematic. We want it to happen in a way in which really, there is no disruption of service. People cannot suffer because of it. So that is the work which is going on. And therefore, on the basis of that, it is possible to track who is doing what they should not be doing and who is not doing what they are supposed to do. Because also, on the basis of that, the county governments also now have a clear indication of what they should be doing for the people. Of course, as you heard His Excellency the President say, they can say there are not enough resources, but at least from a strategic point of view, they should be saying, we are not doing this because we don't have resources, rather than appear not wanting to do it at all. Let me, therefore, not taking very much time, say, on the other hand, to make sure that actual change is taking place and so forth, obviously we need monitoring and evaluation generally and so on. And there's been a lot of self-assessment by the county governments in terms of what they are doing, and they report on it, and they do a fairly good job. But as the Intergovernmental Relations Technical Committee, because the national and county governments coordinating summit is required, that is His Excellency the President and the Governor, they are supposed to make sure that they tell the country what is happening at the two levels on an annual basis. And as IGRTC, we have agreed to embark on a process of identifying, or rather doing an assessment, taking Article 174 objects into account on both horizontal and vertical basis, looking at where are gaps in terms of delivery of devolution. That is something that IGRC will be wishing to do on a sector-by-sector basis, and on that basis, then also we know what is working, what is not working.
1 minute, please.
Okay, but looking at that also on the other hand, really it is going to be very important, and it is related to the third question, which is about clarifying the critical place of inclusive partnerships and so forth. It's really that we got to get the sector forums working, the sector consultative forums. I know Budget Hub, you called it sector working groups. Let's not confuse those with the sector working groups under the National Treasury, which of course has to do with the overall budget. But there are sector consultative forums which are supposed to happen for every sector under Intergovernmental Relations Act. Those have not been working the way they should be working. And those are the forums where the two levels of government should meet with all other stakeholders. And I say with all other stakeholders, including the civil society, to represent the voice of the people, because again, we need organized voice from the citizens. And that is where the civil societies come in. And if you listened very carefully today to the presentation by the chairman of the Council of Governors, he said only 45% of health facilities in Kenya are public, meaning 55% of health facilities in the country are provided by private sector and faith-based organizations. And I'm happy because I'm quoting you, I'm not quoting somebody else. Therefore, there is no exaggeration about it. And it was in his today's speech. What does that mean? It means if you have a serious sector forum, where you are talking about the vision of where you want to take health sector in Kenya today, you got to bring in all those other stakeholders. It means also you need to make sure the voice of the citizen is heard through civil society organizations and the faith-based organizations in that. And on that basis, then you can agree policy, you can agree strategy, you can agree how resources are to be mobilized for the country to achieve what it wants to achieve in that sector. I've just mentioned health, but it should be in every sector. And as far as IGRTC is concerned, there are 12 devolved sectors. But let me also add one factor. Even for the non-devolved functions, it has become very clear that the national government also needs the contribution of county governments. And you can take a case, for example, like security. How do you plan security in a place without involving people who are administering other functions within that county? So the case for the two levels of government to have regular, strategically oriented, policy-oriented, inclusive, participatory sector consultative forums is an imperative for us to consolidate and deepen devolution.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's appreciate. It's interesting because that was one of the things that many of us had hoped would be among the first things, because our devolved system is from a unitary structure that is supposed to be run on basis of cooperation and coordination. And therefore expectation was that in the water sector, for instance, you have a coordinating body, you have an intergovernmental framework that comes to. But let me turn to, before I go to Sonia, let me turn to John. So there's this whole governance of how resources are distributed. There's been a lot that Gishana has talked about, in terms of the numbers, and Kithinji has talked about in terms of now everybody knows what they are supposed to do. And you've been following and tracking all the formulas that have been developed over there, over the four of them, including the fourth one, that is neither here nor there. And also some of the reforms that the Commission on Revenue Allocation, it's unfortunate they are not present in the room today. What's your take, and how do you see that space, and where do you think we should actually be pushing this conversation from a governance perspective?
Thanks, Sams. I think one of the things, just to start where we started the discussion today, is to say one of the things to celebrate as a country when it comes to the reforms that we took up when it comes to decentralization is the fact that we now have mechanisms that are pretty clear about how we try and share revenue, especially between our counties. And the fact that we've gone through a couple of iterations of those formulas is an important step that helps us say we are actually living one of the key purposes. I will use CPA Kithinji's words, one of the purposes of devolution, which was to make sure that the sharing of revenue, national revenue, happened in a way that ensured every part of the country was taken care of. So that's a big step which I celebrate today. But I think for us as Budgeti Hub, as we've engaged with the process of decentralization, of course, one of the areas where we've put a lot of attention is exactly how that part of sharing revenue is playing out. And you can think about the revenue sharing formula that is done by the Commission on Revenue Allocation, but also you can think of other elements, such as how do we distribute CDF, how do we distribute the award project funds within the counties. Is really what principles we are living by, and has that improved, and what can we do to improve them going forward. The first one, on which I'll pick from where CPA Kithinji left, is the fact that one of the things that has happened a lot with these iterations of how we share revenue is they've become events, right? So it's events that after every 5 years, we'll have this big moment where we'll sit down and talk about the formula. There'll be a lot of haggling. There'll be a lot of, I think in 2020, all of us might remember the big fights in the Senate, where now every senator was coming up with their own formula. So it's become an event, rather than thinking of them in a very progressive, continuous way, of how do we make sure we are constantly having a discussion on how are we sharing revenue, how can we improve it, how do we make sure we have a picture from the counties on how they are experiencing the processes of how they receive the revenue, is it able to meet the goals of the functions they have to deliver on. So one of the things we really have to think through is how do we make the process of revenue sharing something that is continuous and create a process that brings more people on board. And that brings me to the second part, which is, again, that process has become a very technical process. It's a mathematics process. It's a process about numbers and more numbers and more numbers. Now, the numbers are okay, and it's good for us to discuss, who is getting what, and is that improving over time. But it's important for us to think about why is it that we need to distribute our resources in a certain way? Right? What is the process by which we go through, and how do we make sure that we are continuously improving the formula informed by the impact that it's actually having? So that means we are not just thinking at the end, which has become one of the big challenges whenever these formulas come to the Senate, where the big challenge is, whenever a formula comes, if I'm the senator from Uasin Gishu, all I want to see is how much is Uasin Gishu getting. If Uasin Gishu is getting more than it used to get previously, that's a very good formula. If Uasin Gishu is getting less than what it used to get, that's a very bad formula. But why is it that a formula produces certain elements of resources for different counties? That means we have to think about how is development changing. Are we having more scenarios where challenges that we used to have are now taken care of? So now the elements of the formula need to deal with other problems and not just the old ones. So that means you take away the negative of incentives where everybody wants to look very poor because the formula says if you are poor, you get more money. So everybody is just fighting to show they are poorer than they've ever been. If you're a county with a big population, you want to say nothing else matters in this world apart from the population. So part of the reason why we are having that as a net effect of the discussions we have around the formula is because it is this event that then focuses a lot just on what the end number is. From where I sit, the numbers are the annex of the discussion. How is our development changing? How are counties developing over time? And how does that inform how the formula then changes as we continue doing different formulas over time? And I think one of the things also that we have to keep in mind is the fact that, yes, we have a structure now of how we share revenue, but we still have a very fragmented approach to it. Very many conditional grants, some of them going directly to the county revenue funds, but others are going directly to the health facilities and so on and so forth. Now, the question is, what does that mean for the decision maker who is at the county level? If I'm the director of budget and I have to make a budget for my county, the form and shape in which the resources come also determines the form and shape in which I make sure that money gets to the point of service delivery. So we need to think about the fragmentation, and we need to think of how do we make sure it does not negatively affect service delivery. Because if money comes in different forms and shapes and it comes with different conditions, what does that mean for the point where the nurse or that extension officer has to deliver a certain service within the county? So there's something we need to think about, the unification of resources that come to counties. Because the more fragmented they get, the more difficult it gets to budget for them, the more difficult it gets to kind of keep track in terms of accountability during expenditure. And that is something that in the long term might actually affect the predictability and the long-term view that counties might have on their development. My last point, I think there is a big discussion to be had because whenever we talk about revenue sharing, and Dr. Gishana, Dr. Rugo have mentioned it today, of the proportion of money within the shareable revenue that goes to counties. But let's look, because we are a country that does not live in a vacuum. We have other countries around the world that have done devolution. What is one thing that stands out in some of those countries that we compare ourselves a lot with? And how do we look at them, especially when we are thinking of challenges we are facing? Late disbursement of resources to counties is a big challenge that comes up often. A big expectation on counties is that they will continuously raise more on-source revenue, that they are no longer very dependent on the national government. Now, there's one thing that is good for us to keep in mind, and you can look at many countries around the world that have decentralization, and which is to think about the on-source revenue that counties have access to, and the ability of those resources to cover their costs is very limited. When you take Nairobi out of the math, Nairobi collects about a third of all the revenue that is collected by counties. And for a simple reason, they are a big county, big economy, so the headquarters of the, of the government for, since independence. So it's very natural that happens. But for other counties, the proportion of their budget funded by OSR is less than 5%. Now, when you look at countries like India, one of the things that they've done is they've done reforms over the years and the iterations of their decentralization, where they've actually given counties some powers to do some taxation on some of the sales tax, some taxation around income taxes, and so on and so forth. Is that a conversation that is palatable in Kenya today? Especially when we are thinking about something that one of the colleagues said, the long-term sustainability of counties. Now, the structure of our devolution is we decided to decentralize the elements of expenditure and everything that has to do with spending. But revenue collection, we kept it as a central function. So, is that a conversation that we need to start having so that at least we can start holding counties also accountable in terms of, you're no longer just dependent on the national government for every bit of the equitable share that has to come to you, but there's an element of collection that you have that then we can also hold accountable. We can hold you accountable because now that you have to raise and have the money to spend over time. So quite some interesting lessons we can learn from countries like Brazil and India. And I know the fact that the law gives that powers as a discussion that should happen in the National Assembly will be a very interesting discussion to bring up and see whether it also brings in an additional impotence to how counties fund their services.
Thank you, John. Let's appreciate John for that. He's asking, is it time to rethink Article 209 and say, okay, fine. So you are saying you don't have enough OSR. Watu wa Machakos, they pay their payee in Machakos and demand the services. I'm just trying to simplify what he's trying to be very diplomatic about. And, Homa Bay people pay their excise tax here and therefore utilize that resource. What is that a conversation that we, and of course, one of the things I would like to throw back to you, would that happen in a context where you still have 47 counties, or you are also saying, do we also consolidate counties so that then you have functional units, as is the case in India, in the US, even in Germany, the ambassador was here. They have only 16 regions, and they are far much bigger economy than ourselves. And what economies of scale would that present? So, Sonia, let me turn to you. You work more at as the people say, at the grassroots. Though I was told grass has no roots, so there's nothing like grassroots. You work at the citizen interaction points. You have been very much involved with the engagement around ensuring that the citizen voice is heard on every matter practical. First, what has worked for you, and what are some of the practices that you're observing that you think will be critical to build on for devolution? Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. But I want to start with the grassroots conversation. I think when His Excellency was speaking, he spoke that Kenya's real power is at the grassroots. So that grassroots word will not disappear from our mouths anytime soon. But allow me to take you back a bit, because I think I'm the youngest here, by virtue of how I have profiled all of you. My first interaction with devolution was banana and, was it orange? And I think that was the first, and I didn't even know what it meant, but I remember it because of how my dad was campaigning for orange at that time. Those times, currently people call Raila Baba, but those times people used to call him Tinga. I don't know how many people in the room relate to when we used to call Baba Tinga. And it meant a lot. And I think that was the closest of when all the heads left Nairobi and came to what now we call counties, because then we saw them in numbers. Back then, ilikuwa Daniel, to teach. My history and social studies is very bad, but the second president, when he used to come, people would line. So that was what we knew power to be. But then let's come back to what our CPA here said in regards to the objects of devolution. Devolution, I believe, was not an end to itself. It was something that was supposed to provide an opportunity to the end. So when we talk about the objects, what it was coming to solve or make better, then we have how they were intended to be made better. Some of the things was, because devolution is ideally a social contract between the citizens and duty bearers, right? So as we speak about it from that point, it meant that citizens had to be at the center. And even at TISA, what we do with our work over the years in devolution is always to ensure that people are the ones who are pushing for change, the ones we currently call grassroots. Out there, wanaitwa mama mboga and boda boda. But here for today, for the purpose of arms, lazima tuwaite grassroots. So as I speak to that, I am also reminded that when we say citizens have to be at the center, it means that when Oliver Waindi was speaking in the morning and talking about civic education, people must be given the opportunity to know what is entitled, they are entitled to. You've heard me nimesema what I knew about devolution was orange and banana. And that was what I knew. Na mimi nimesomea town. So there are those who are very far away from the realities who then depend on organizations, civil societies, to be able to bring up the aspects around responsibilities, and that's where we come in to bridge the gap. But then for us to ensure that devolution also works, we also have to consider that there are actors that must be playing together, because it is not going to work by itself. IGHR, it's gone. But yes, what they have done, they didn't do it by themselves. Governments like to call it multi-stakeholders, as we call it collaboration and synergies. So when they speak about multi-stakeholder, it's different agencies coming together to come up with a common ground that allows people to see a way forward. What we have been doing at TISA over the years and currently as we deepen our work in counties is to ensure that citizens together with civil society are able to appreciate the role that governments play in the whole conversation of actualizing what we want. When you say good governance, as Sonia, I cannot just lead by myself, right? There are policies that have been put in place that allow us to even be here when we talk about freedom of expression, freedom of coming together. These are policies that guide and allow us to be able to do this. So one of the key things in terms of strategies that are working is to ensure there is intentional collaborations. Intentional collaborations mean that both citizens know what they bring to the table, but also are able to be, what's the word? Unaona, you are empathizing with the situation of the other person and coming together to come up with a workable solution for both of you. So that is one. And an example would be, let me cite Uasin Gishu County, who from the time we started working with them, and this means even all the other development partners, when people were working with them, there has been constant challenges that are raised often in the conferences and meetings that we hold with the people we engage at that point. And often they would raise, there's always that blame game we like to do. Government has not done, government has not done. So then we said, instead of doing this government has not done, why don't we bring government to the room? And then we all blame each other and come up with a solution. Currently, the civil society network there is having a good relation with the government and are always considered whenever there are key engagements that are happening, just for them to bring their voice in. And sometimes they might not even be they don't have the expertise that Joan has. But because of the linkages that we have between the different networks, they're able to onboard people who then can be able to support their county government in the areas that they require. That brings me to the second point, which is now collaborations again within the civil society networks and within the whole development space. Because then while Sonia at TISA leads accountability and we focus mainly on corruption, public debt, there are people who are literally looking at the governance around health. How then do we come together to ensure that as we speak about the gaps that are in the health sector, all the other parties are brought together? So that's, again, on collaboration. Allow me to stress one point in regards to working with county governments or duty bearers. One of the things that are working quite well for us, because we constantly push for social accountability, which is literally citizens like me and you holding duty bearers to account for purposes of good service provision. So when we talk about social accountability, it then means that we need two sides of the coin, again, citizens and duty bearers. In Vihiga, we have projects that are literally relying on the county government for it to work. We have scorecards that we do, we have social audits that we do. But if we do not engage the duty bearer, then they just remain surveys that have collected evidence, but have no channel where they can be solved. So one of the things we have been pushing again within Vihiga County is also the implementation of a grievance redress mechanism. So then people are able to have a way through which, once we do the scorecards, there's a channel for feedback that then gives feedback that then citizens are able to embrace and be able to work with quite well. And lastly, before the mic is taken away from me, there's also need for constant partnership between local media and local actors, because then they understand their realities. While us who come from Nairobi or different places where we work, we do not have the actual context. But the people who are there, in this case now the local actors and the media personnel, are able to bring it out in a very real way and that is relatable to the people, and they're able to feel the need to be part of the change that they want to see. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia. I deeply appreciate. Really, I think you bring in some very strong word, a word that I have never thought about, intentional collaborations on both sides. I think there is need for actors working together, that it doesn't matter how well citizens understand what is supposed to be happening, the engagement with the government officials and the vice versa also, And one of the things that we have been stressing that really good governance is to the benefit even of the office bearer, of the government official, because it makes life easier. When you're transparent, we make life easier. Our work at Bajeti Hub has shown that counties are becoming more transparent. Our expectation is that makes life easier for the government officials, because then it's easy for the people to understand policy, as it were. I think we've heard a lot from this side. Allow me to turn the mic now to the other side. And I'm conscious that we've already done about an hour, 5 minutes of our time. So let's hear. This is a conversation, really. It's not that they have all the information. What's your take? What's your take on matters of our functions, the systemic questions around it, seeing the totality of it? John is talking about not having sharing of revenue as an event, as a jamboree, if not a boxing match or a tug of war that Kidenji, though the intention was very different, alluded to. Geshana has spoken about, that the commensurate of resources that are basically supposed to enable this. What's your take in any of these topics? Remember, we are focusing on good governance, and we are asking ourselves, how does we make sure that accountability, transparency, participation actually does bear fruits? Because devolution, as we've been told, is not just an end in itself. It's not something that happens at the very end. It's a very process. It's a very mechanisms that we put in place. So my colleagues will be sharing mics. Feel free, just lift up your hand wherever you are. I'll see you, and then we'll give you a mic. It can be a question to any of the panelists, including the keynote speaker, or it can be a comment from where you sit, from the way you see it from your county, the way you see it from the work that you do for those of you who are, in different agencies, whether the national government or the county government. Let's get going with this. So we have 3 hands. I'll start with Morakaru, I believe. And then, I seem to know everybody in this room. So we start with Morakaru, and then we come to the gentleman in white. There's somebody behind you who already had the mic. Then we'll come to you. Then the lady, yes, the lady in this corner, and then the lady in front here.
Good evening, everyone, and also to the members of the panel. I've loved the word that Sonia has used, that is intentional collaboration, as Ams has mentioned. But my question, or where I'd like the conversation to go to is on matters to do with accountability. Within the CBTS, we have seen that the transparency levels of the county governments have indeed increased. However, we lack institutions that are holding these particular persons to account. Today, the president was mentioning that he has assented to the County PAFM Act, which is now going to allow the county assemblies to be independent. However, we already have some sort of structure at the Senate level. However, we find that other than just bringing in the governor and questioning them in terms of misappropriation of funds, it just ends there. And there's nothing that is done to follow up in terms of the monies that have been misappropriated. So even if you're talking about timely sharing of revenue, in as much as you're talking about the need for us to go ahead and devolve the functions, if we do not have an institution that is actively holding these several actors within the devolved government to account, then we will be having certain missing gaps. So can we address, especially us as the CSOs, how we can also come in and hold these particular persons accountable? Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I hope the next person who answers, even as we come back to the panel, can actually answer. So it is this institution that we are talking about. Let's come to the gentleman in white, and if you can keep it concise, I would appreciate.
Thank you very much. I'm Robert Kirui from Nandi County. And Nandi County is a member of the Open Government Partnership. And I want to just mention a few of the benefits that we have.
Mention one, please, if you don't mind.
Yes, indeed. I will try and do one. One is on the issue of intentional. It has to be intentional. Going open and going, even including what my brother has mentioned, being accountable, you have to choose to be accountable or not. One of the things that we have done in Nandi is actually enacting laws that are able to govern the issues of openness and participation of the people. Public participation and civic engagement law has really enhanced the participation of the citizenry. Another thing is collaboration and intentional collaboration. Nandi County is seemingly quiet on the issues of civil society. Reason? We have actually worked with the civil society to ensure that we have a collaborative working environment that enables development to thrive. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Very, very good from OGP. Let's come to the lady here and then come to the other lady right in front.
Good afternoon. So I'm Marale, and I'm speaking on my own. These are my own views and not my organization views. So my comments are just with respect to what I've heard today. And if you listen to all of us, it looks like we have policies in place. It's not really an issue of resources. And so maybe there is need for us to begin to think about a shift of mindset. And when I'm talking about a shift of mindset, for example, one of the panelists was talking about how we can begin to think about increasing county revenues. And of course, he was talking about introducing new products, for example. But for me, I'm coming from the point of view that we are always very quick at prescribing solutions, as opposed to looking at the big picture and understanding the problems. And so instead of asking the questions, can introducing new products to increase revenues, we need to begin to ask, what are these systemic conditions that are holding the issue of revenue being a problem? And when we map the issue and begin to understand the problem from a very big perspective, from a bigger perspective, then we begin to provide solutions, as opposed to just identifying the challenge and already you're prescribing our solutions, because that is where most of the time we go wrong. Thank you.
Good. Can I push you a bit? Allow me just to take advantage of my position. What are some of these big things that you think we must address? You challenged us to think about the bigger systemic issues. One or two of them that you would like us to consider. Just give her the mic again.
Yeah, like I was saying, first of all is the shift of mindset. because the issue is not necessarily the resource, but our mindset is holding our ideas, and so we are not allowing ourselves to have to be creative. So shifting mindset. But like I'm also saying, we need to begin to ask ourselves, instead of prescribing solutions, we need to begin to ask, what are these underlying conditions that are holding the current situations in place? Because that is when we begin to address the underlying causes and not just the symptoms. Because when you begin to ask, can we do this to address revenue? You're already prescribing a solution, but you're already not seeing the big picture of where the problem is coming from.
Thank you very much. I'll give the lady in front, then I'll come back to you, Brenda. And then I'll go this side. I hope I'm not missing any hand. I haven't seen any hand towards my right. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. My name is Acheng Migaya. I'm from Siaya County. My question is to Sonia. What is the place of gender inclusivity in governance? Because we find that gender has always been treated as an afterthought or something to be set aside and to be looked at later, yet gender permeates every facet of the society. So what is the place of gender inclusivity in governance? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please pass it back to Dr. Brenda, and then I come this side.
I'm sorry to take over your place, but he was ahead of me. So if you jump there, then come back.
Oh, sorry, I had missed his hand. Kindly, gentlemen. Go ahead.
I was wondering, why are you not seeing me? I'm in a suit.
My apology.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a very good discussion. And today, if there was a county to be given an award for digitization of services and therefore creating more accountability, you saw today the example we were given. I think it is really great. For me, I would want to say this. Our counties can be very strong. Our counties can have measures, structures, systems of ensuring there is impact and service delivery.
Sorry, you forgot your name?
My name is Dr. David Amudavi. I'm the Executive Director of BioVision Africa Trust, based in Nairobi. Thank you. So the point I want to say is, our counties, in essence, can grow to become very strong states within our own government and our own nation. If only we have very clear mechanisms and structures for service and impact delivery, number one. Number two, if it's also very clear that those bestowed with the responsibility to lead us in development become accountable. I like what the young man has said here, accountability. But what are the mechanisms for accountability for us? When leaders have failed to be accountable in their service delivery, what are the measures to be taken against them? So for me, I think my cry would be, we need very clear mechanism for checking on accountability and instilling a sense of pride to deliver to the people. Personally, I would really give a very high price to leaders who deliver service and impact and who honestly can account for the resources we give them. If we nurture that, that will be great. So I want to propose, as part of resolution out of this conference, let us develop very clear mechanisms and structures for service and impact delivery. And also very clear recourse on failure to do the failure for that, what happens? Because sometimes people really get away with things. And the Kenyans were very quick at getting away with things and forgetting. And I think we can be proud of delivery. So, moderator, we are discussing a very important issue. I would like us to see a mindset change in our leaders.
Thank you.
Where people pride in accountable service and impact delivery.
Thank you very much. I'll go back to just behind you, Dr. Brenda from the Senate. Sorry to... I'm raising that deliberately because you should be the guys with the mechanisms and the structures. So I hope you'll answer their question. Then we'll come to Maura. Go ahead.
You put me in a very difficult position. I'm speaking in my own capacity. People who speak on behalf of the Senate are not here, unless one of my colleagues here wants to take up that mantle. On the issue of own source revenue, I think John raises a very important point, and I think Marale is also saying something that there's a tension in this space that was not envisioned in our design of devolution, in that countries were not designed to be revenue collecting units. They were supposed to deliver services. Services are highly recurrent expenditure, yeah? Of course, counties can raise their own revenue. However, they were not designed that way. They were not given the tools or the revenue, units to be able to raise revenue. Yeah, the taxing measures to raise revenue. So either we increase the ability to raise revenue and actually hold them accountable for it, or we acknowledge that counties were actually supposed to deliver services. And I know this is not a popular conversation, but I think it's one that we need to have, especially as we push governors to raise revenues, reward those who are raising more. And there's nothing wrong with it. As John has said, other countries have gone in that direction, but we need to be pragmatic about it. Of course, there are questions about efficiency. Are they raising as much as they can with what they have? All of that is true. But at some point, we need to also look at how much are we going to push them and who is going to bear the brunt of how much we are pushing them if they have very limited fiscal space to actually tax people. Because eventually it's a very small, base that they have to target, and oftentimes it's a very poor people. And I think we're not having that conversation. So if you feel that counties should be able to raise revenue, then let's have that conversation and give them power to do so. And the second thing that I wanted to raise is on, I think it's Henry, and I think also Commissioner raised it, Chairman Giragu, about progressive devolution. And I think also it's been mentioned when you talk about impact and kind of transformative governance. Devolution, as it was designed, I think we've all been pushing to this place where let's transfer these functions and let counties carry them out. However, there's a question of which level, we all forget the principle of subsidiarity, which level of government is best placed to be able to deliver this service? Are we actually measuring impact and seeing which level of government is delivering it? The reason I raise this is because the question, for example, on bursaries or school feeding programs, it seems that counties want to do this. It seems that they're closer to the people, and therefore they're able to get this information faster and react faster. Should we then be transferring that function to the level of government that is best placed to do it, or should it stay at the national government level? So this kind of constant evaluation, constantly looking at devolution, looking at it as a progressive thing. Who is delivering the service best? And having measures that actually tell us that. Because at times we're actually not able to see that. We see services being delivered, but are they being delivered efficiently and upon which benchmark? How are we measuring it progressively from year to year? And I think there's space for IGRTC to do this, there's space for SDD to do this, and actually allow Kenyans to be able to look at this progressively. Because when we see it on the dashboards, in some ways, it's not a neutral actor. We are only seeing what the county wants us to see. And the last question, Arms, I know you want me to sit down. I think the question that's always raised about reports that come from Parliament or county assemblies, and whether, what happens to those reports once they're tabled. We don't see any impact. Parliament is not, or county assemblies are not implementing actors. They table reports, and they're government agencies that are put in place to actually implement the resolutions and recommendations that Parliament comes up with. Parliament cannot go out and arrest a governor or arrest a cabinet secretary. It's not set up that way. And that's the beauty of separation of powers. And so I think the question then becomes, are we sufficiently empowering government agencies to implement county assembly resolutions or Senate resolutions, and how are we tracking those resolutions to ensuring that they're not disappearing? I think that is a better question than saying Parliament or the legislative arm of government is inefficient.
Thank you very much. Please get the mic to my friend and comrade Mwaura. I hope he will also not say he's commenting in his personal capacity.
Yeah, when you speak as a government spokesperson, is that the government position? Yeah, I am seeing my friends from the Senate, which I was privileged to serve, trying to recuse themselves, and for good order, Brenda Ogembo and Marale Sande. Actually, Dr. Rugo, my fellow comrade, Rugo and I were student leaders in KU. Now we are protesting against any form of anti-devolution measures. Now, there's something I would want to comment generally, is that yes, devolution is the revolution. Why? Because heretofore, if you traveled across the country, there was very little to be seen. But now, I was sharing with the DG of Kirinyaga. If you go to Kirinyaga now, Kirogoya, you can see the emergence of a CBD there, kind of a mini city. A good example is here in Homa Bay. Used to come here in the budget committee when I was in National Assembly, devolution had not taken off, and Homa Bay was little more than just a small little town, no roads, tin roof houses. Now it's becoming another very beautiful city with a lot of potential. Same case can be said of Kitui. Same case can be said of Bungoma. It's absolutely amazing. So devolution is a revolution. There will always be a question as to whether we over-devolved, whether we should have had lesser counties, maybe 14 or 16, for their own economic viability. Because when I was in the Senate, you required at least 2.7 billion to run a county, no matter the size. I'm sure that figure may have gone up because there may be some people here from the Commission on Revenue Allocation. I used to serve as the Vice Chairman of the Finance and Budget Committee of the Senate. Now, Senator Moses Kajwang, who was my chair of devolution committee, asked a very fundamental question. Are counties becoming pay-slip paying entities? We were doing an analysis the other day, and we were surprised that overall, if you were to do an overall assessment of our expenditure, both levels of government, it is suggesting that we may be spending up to 96% on recurrent expenditure. That's a suggestion. It can be verified. It's not, don't quote me on this one, but I'm trying to show that. The last time when I was in the Senate, counties were spending only 12% on development. 88% was recurrent. So that is where the danger is, and that is why then the conversation that Brenda has raised is very important. If there is a design problem with our counties, we may then need to genuinely and seriously recalibrate to give them the role to collect monies and be held accountable. I am not very concerned first on whether we passed the ONSOS revenue bill, because it was one of the contested ones. If it has been passed, I think that's one of the things that we need to look into as well. Because counties then must also be told that they also have a responsibility of their own development, because if they rely so much on the center, you can see what is happening. One of the good suggestions in the county public finance bill is that then the monies will be rolling over to the next financial year. And that will really help us in dealing with issues of pending bills. However, I think there is something that we need to design, and somebody can pick this up, either in the civil society or in parliament, because the increase on the number of employees is a problem within the civil service. When the third administration was there, the position of secretary was appointive. Secretary, sports secretary, whatever. It was just below the principal secretary. Today, it is a career progression position. So that is the way the civil service has been increasing its promotional, proclivities. Why? Because there is a nexus between the career civil servants and those that come with a given administration. So in order to reduce the issue of employees, there needs to be a law for both national and county governments that caps these two tiers so that it's not open-ended. So that you can say positions from these upwards, they are appointive, and of course they depend on who is the governor, which administration is in power. That way, you'll also reduce, because every governor who comes in comes with his people, and they must be employed, and then those who are the other governor are rendered irrelevant, but they are still in the payroll. I hope you are getting what I'm saying. So this is what is becoming a problem. And it is also impinging on public service delivery. Because, of course, you must also pay political debts. You must also bring in new thinking within the county public service and the national government. But then there is a need, though, to cap that so that any governor knows that when I come in, I have 500 positions to fit, so that he's able to, so that it is not open-ended. And that way, then, we'll also be able to preserve some monies for development.
Thank you, Maura.
Let me make my final point, Daktari. Mimi ni msemaji wa serikali, kwa hivyo naongea kidogo sana. The other thing that also we need to appreciate is that we need to strengthen the county assembly's oversight role. I'm increasingly hearing governors saying that the Senate is taking over the role of county assemblies in becoming the primary oversight body. So that, again, needs also to be properly defined. So that to what extent, then, does the Senate take over if the matter is supposed to have already been canvassed and concluded at the county assembly. I know for sure there has been an argument where we have national government assembly, the National Assembly and the Senate. Yes, there's a specialization that I can tell you. From my experience of having served in both houses, you find the National Assembly will do more of the national matters and also Senate on the country. And that is by design as well. However, there's a lacuna there because, again, we designed a Senate that is a little bit subservient to the National Assembly because we had the experience of the National Assembly. Again, it's a constitutional issues. However, be that as it may, generally, Dr. Rugo and the panel, there may be a lot of challenges, but I believe with the county governments in place, more and more people are being reached out to. They are getting the services. We have governors who stay in the village and are able to improve on their villages if they are well-intentioned and if they are really, they are properly elected and they have the concern of the people and they love the people. Devolution is a revolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was one hand right in front here next to Cuba. This side, I'm looking. I don't want to lock anybody out, but I know we need now to be landing this ship. It's been running for long. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Ari. My name is Naomi Kefa from the Council of Governors. So my comment will be two-part. One will be a response as a COG employee, and then the other one will be personal. So the first one is just a comment on what the moderator said on COG taking a backseat in terms of side events at the conference and the extent of implementation of resolutions. So it's not really a backseat, it is opening up the conversation so that other actors in the space can lead conversations. I want to confirm that we have more than half the governors inside events across the 3 days, and they're sitting in and answering questions and engaging, and I believe that that is not a backseat. Thank you. And then so I have a question. Increasingly, we are seeing county assemblies and the Senate, let me say loosely, getting more money in their control. I mean, we have seen this, the NGCDF and the NGAF, and there's also the World Development Fund issue and discussion, and we are seeing the county assembly or the National Assembly becoming, and the constituency becoming centers of service delivery through the assembly. And so the Senate, for the Senate, it's the Senate Oversight Fund in the bill that's currently before Parliament. So I just want to know what is the civil society's view on holding assemblies to account, if at all we get to points where we have, for example, the World Development Fund and assemblies, let me say, quote unquote, controlling monies that are meant for service delivery. That could go to either Deputy ED or Ms. Sonia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to believe I have not locked anybody out. Looking. Okay, one last hand right there. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Mane from Pelham, Kenya, and I'm happy to be here. And I'm happy that on the discussion of governance and social accountability. My only issue is, as civil society organization, we've been supporting our communities to participate in the public participation forums. But mostly we get the notices very late. Is there a way this can be improved so that we can have good participation for the communities? The other thing is, can it be at a local level where we don't have to support with transport and other maybe overnight stays so that the communities can stay? I like that, so that the community can participate. I like someone who asked about gender participation, because we always ensure that the women, the youth, and also the other people can be able to participate in this public participation. But if they are very far from them, and we know the roles that the women have at home, it may be very difficult for them to participate, hence being locked out from sharing their views on these public processes. The other issue I'd like to ask is, No, in this public participation, a lot is shared by these communities. How is the feedback given? We normally don't get this feedback, or is it just a matter of tick and done? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Allow me to stop it there, not because I don't want us to hear more, but because I would like us to learn this. So I'm going to start now in the reverse order. Again, and finish, and I'll ask you to kindly take about not more than 3 minutes, but some of you have been asked a couple questions. I will not try and rehash them, but I would like John to say something about participation, because we've just finished some work with COG on that. So please pick the questions that were addressed to you, or any other matter you'd like to address, but try and limit it to about 3 minutes.
Thank you. So I'll start with the public participation question, and I think it's a shared concern on the impact that citizen voices have on the final decisions that are made. And this might be in terms of policy, but also in terms of direct budget allocations and spending. I think that concern is one that we had a lot. In the last year or so, we've worked with the Council of Governors, the State Department for Devolution, with the partnership with the World Bank, to try and look at practices, specifically across all the 47 counties, and have conversations with those responsible with public participation in the counties, together with civil society organizations. The biggest gap that came out was the feedback loop gap on how do you know what decision was taken, because citizens, through their voice gave certain suggestions that were to be taken up. So a lot of very interesting good practices actually came up from some counties. I was just listing down Kwale and Wajir as 2 examples I remember, where they've started preparing public participation reports, and these reports actually try and close that feedback loop. And so in these guidelines, and I'm hoping that they will be made of use very soon, those are some of the key areas that have gone into those guidelines, thinking through how do you learn from practice of the counties that are already doing it, in terms of making sure citizens know that I participated, I said something, either it was taken up and funded, either it was not taken up, but it will be funded next time, it was a resource challenge, or it was not taken up because it's a national function, or county function, vice versa, if it's a national process, or if it's completely silent, that's what we want generally to avoid. So I just want to pick it from the point of there are some good examples which we hope other counties can see as an opportunity to actually expand how they report back to citizens after public participation. And that comes with everything in between. What do you need to do before public participation? How well do you communicate early? What kind of civic education do you need to do even before people engage? What kind of platforms do you use so that to make sure everybody can access those public participation engagements? What do you do during the public participation itself? Who facilitates the public participation? It is somebody who is knowledgeable on the subject under discussion. Are they able to correct misinformation? Are they able to allow people to make good decisions in the room? So there's quite a lot to think through effective public participation, and we hope that what we learned from civil society colleagues and county governments that went into those guidelines will provide a few more options of how we can do it, well. To Naomi's question, so one of the things that we did in the new constitution is that we gave a lot of powers to parliament when it comes to making budgets. In fact, the language in our public finance law is that parliament passes the budget with or without amendments. Now let's focus on the with amendments, because that's what happens often. So it means that parliament has powers, even as the process with the executive comes to them for approval, to actually really influence the budget. Even in scenarios where the executive does not want to budge, they actually have the powers to adjust the budget. So that brings us to the question on why there's still this need and push that different legislative bodies still want to play an implementation role. I know the language that is used is cultured in we are patrons. It's nice language. But in the real sense, that is kind of the dilemma we find ourselves in, that Parliament has more powers to actually influence the budget very directly. But at the same time, there's this big push that there still be all these funds. So everybody wants a fund. Every legislative element wants a fund. But that is connected to a point which I really like that was made on how do we change mindsets? Because I think that's the challenge we have with all these funds is a mindset problem. We, as a country, we love projects. everybody wants a project. Everything has to be turned into a project this, project that, because that's the only time you seem to be working. But I would make the argument, probably that's not the best way development happens, right? So you're thinking about the long term, and in there you might have to do some infrastructural projects and whatnot. But we are stuck in this mindset where if it's not brick and mortar, if I'm not the one with the name on that project, then I'm not working. So I feel we have an opportunity that is in the law and in the constitution that allows Parliament to have actual influence in the budget. But this other side seems to be more attractive, and I think is a mindset problem that we definitely should start changing. Civil society organizations, institutions that are more in the intergovernmental level as well, and oversight institutions such as the Office of the Controller of Budget, we all can play a role. We all can play a role in that, and for citizens as well, because citizens are becoming powerful. I like the fact that the cross-cutting theme today since morning has been how powerful citizens have to be for accountability to work well. And at Budget Hub, we always argue that the best auditor of government spending is an informed citizens. So in the changing of mindsets, we need, yes, to make sure that the laws work as they should be and where they provide opportunities, but at the same time, we need citizens to be asking the right questions that push away a little bit of this mindset on projects, because that seems to be the big driver of this funds element.
Thank you. Sonia, keep it just precise. The gender question, +1. Oh, and I should have said that plus your final comments. He has already said this.
Okay. Let me start with the place of gender inclusivity in governance. I hope that was asked not as a women issue, but as a quality issue. One of the reasons why I'm saying that is because with gender inclusivity, there's normally some level of equity in terms of participation, because then one of the things it brings into play when you speak about governance, it strengthens the voice of people who are there and also representation. But also ideally, an important point to note is that when there are different, both men and women, there is likelihood of better policies, because all the blind spots that I might have or John might have are put on the open. Then all of us can be able to actively or efficiently bring policies that meet each and every one of us at our points of needs. And I think one of the things that I wanted to also bring out is the gender inclusivity part touches on one of the objects of devolution that speaks on equity. So when we bring that as a key component in governance, we are ideally meeting some of the purposes of devolution ultimately. My final remarks would be to still continue with the conversation that has been in regards to people power. And for those of us who are working for different agencies and are tasked with ensuring that citizens are more informed, is for us to continue skilling people. As John has reiterated, is when someone is informed, they are able to put the pressure that we require for us to achieve what we look at as good governance. And the vice versa is also something else, because if I do not know what I'm entitled to, then I cannot put pressure to achieve what I want. Lastly, is as we skill, we also need to have a group of people who stand in the gap between the local mwananchi and the duty bearers, even ourselves as civil society. So then we also push for a more enhanced or advanced engagement of community paralegals who then have some legal background, but not as lawyers, but are there to stand in the gap and bring interpretation when need be, when those of us who are able to actively do that are unavailable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I pass to you, Kidenji, especially on these mechanisms question, and then your final remark.
Okay, thank you. Let me start, Mr. Moderator, with one very important point raised about mindsets, and go back to it because the lady who raised Madam Mara, who also raised the issue of the bigger picture. And you asked her about the bigger picture. And I would say there's a bigger picture, which generally we have not looked at. It is partly a rules to what I talked to about what is Article 174 asking us to achieve. But one of the things which nobody has done so far, including IGRTC, is to tell us for each one of the purposes which we are doing, do we have a benchmark? So that we can say, in 5 years' time or in 10 years' time, this is what we want to achieve in terms of inclusivity. This is what we want to achieve in terms of minorities and excluded groups. And therefore, it's a big issue. And it's also a big issue in one important respect, that I don't think we have really, at least at certain levels, we don't have a shared sense that the success of devolution is a national strategic imperative. That we, having fixed ourselves with the Constitution, we have no choice but to make sure that the Constitution works and agree what are the benchmarks of making sure that it works. Because again, as she indicated, we might do a few prescriptions here and there. But actually, we have got some serious issues. I think if you listen partly to yourselves here, but also more so to Honorable Mwaura, we are saying there are some basics we need to fix. Remember he was asking, did we over-devolve? That is a question we need now to start asking. I will have my answer for him. We did not over-devolve. It's just that what we devolved is not working as well as we wanted it to do. I say that because, again, going back to the bigger picture, if you get the counties, the 47 counties, or even if they were 8, each doing its own taxation, we have the same problem we have with the cess today. Because now it's more expensive for somebody to transport maize from Kitale to Embu than from Kampala to Embu. Because one is considered to be transit good, or to be import. The other one is local traders imposed a lot of taxes along the way. So we have issues to look at. But that does not preempt the question he has asked. Did we over-devolve or have we short-devolved? And there are communities in this country who believe we have under-devolved. Because you know very well, Honorable Mwaura, there are communities which are asking for their own county governments. And you know why they're asking for their own county governments. So we have real issues here which we need to address. And in that context, therefore, I think we need a conversation which is not, I think, for example, BBI just was like a repair work. Nothing really thought deeply. Now we got the Constitution, Article 174. We got Schedule 4. Do we need to do a bit of changes on that Schedule 4, which is partly the issue about subsidiarity? That does the Schedule 4 and even the Gazette notice that we have issued now as IGRTC do they address the issue of subsidiarity? The answer is no, because in any case, there wasn't time really to do that kind of professional legal work, to think about subsidiarity to the ultimate at that particular time. So we have work to do, all of us, to address these matters. Finally, and that is why I'm happy that at least we have one honorable important and influential person in the room. We need a session of paper on devolution and public sector management in the country, to address the issues Mheshimiwa you have raised about excessive wage bills. Okay, it is not just an issue of PFM. Okay? It's a issue also of agreeing how we are managing affairs generally. And why are some institutions not intervening when we would have expected them to intervene? But having said all that, let's also remember that often we talk about devolution and its challenges and so on, as a county government issue.
Can really know where it went. Lastly, on the question of pending bills has nothing to do with the viability of counties. Pending bills has a lot to do with a failure to use evidence-based budgeting. 12 years after the promulgation of the implementation of devolution, you can't tell me as a county you don't know for a fact how much is your revenue potential. You've raised revenue for 12 years. The maximum you've ever raised is 500 billion. You need to tell me why your revenue projection for the next financial year is 2 billion. Because we overproject, we undercollect, but we use the overprojected amount as a basis for budgeting and contracting. And at the end of the day, when we fail to collect, we don't have money to pay, hence pending bills. Now, I'm happy that county assemblies now been given independence powers from the governors. The only thing you've done really is taken away the governor's leverage while giving counties all the leverage that they need, because both of them were manipulating each other, okay, financially. But let's talk about what that means then in terms of oversight. We need to be able to capacitate our county assemblies to be able to question those issues relating to evidence-based budgeting. When the executive presents an overprojected, a bloated budget, we need to be able to ask, how do we intend to actually finance this expenditure? An important question by Brenda, which is going to be the last point I'll be making, is on the question of subsidiarity and what it means for functional allocation. I agree with my senior Kiragu that we never engaged in a scientific analysis of subsidiarity to say this function will perfectly be implemented by counties and therefore let's allocate it to counties under the fourth schedule. Therefore, one of the arguments I make is the functional unbundling and analysis is a continuous process in agreement with Brenda, but it does not have to be done unilaterally, okay, by one level of government saying, because this function is very close to us, we think we can better be able to undertake it, so let's do it. There is a constitutional mechanism for doing that. Article 187 provides for transfer of functions. Article 186 provides for mechanisms with respect to concurrent functions, where now IGRTC comes in and says this is a shared functions on the basis of subsidiarity. What do we think which level of government is best placed to be able to undertake? If counties feel they're better placed to be able to undertake bursaries, why not engage the national government? Sign over this function to us, allocate, also accompany it with the resources, and let us actually undertake that particular function. There are constitutional mechanisms that have been put in place to facilitate these processes, and these ought to be followed. And my last comment, my closing remark is, again, to echo what my senior has said, that devolution is a joint national project. It is not a county's project. And for a very long time, we've looked at devolution as a county's project. And therefore, whenever we do something to facilitate devolution, we feel like we should be congratulated and be told you've done a fantastic job, and therefore, you've done us a favor as counties. That's where we went wrong. That's why we don't have sufficient support from the national government, because maybe the problem arose during the transition period, where we needed to assert the power and the place of devolution in the Kenya's new constitutional dispensation, that we pushed the national government away and they became disinterested and indifferent. Now we get to a point where they look at devolution as that is a county's project. It is not. We need to be able to reinitiate conversations, both in our intergovernmental relations fora and various other forums, to be able to bring back national government or national governance institutions to the table and on the understanding that this is a joint project that needs to be nurtured by both levels of government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Help me appreciate our panelists. I can tell now they are all warmed up. So you can tell the second round, they were all very natural, very spirited. So Geshana, of course, I wanted to ask you, you say that only personnel money is known where it goes. But we hear of ghost workers. Do ghosts also have families? No, don't answer. don't answer that one. Just on a light note, I want to invite Getungo Amere to come and just do a closing and a vote of thanks, after which we'll appreciate our panelists and bring this to a close. Getungo is a program coordinator at Muzalendo Trust. These are the people who tell you whether your member of parliament has spoken the whole year or has never spoken. The whole year, they just sleep there, they don't show up. These are the guys. Gitungo.
Thank you so much, Daktari. My task will be a very short one, 5 minutes, just to give you a summary of this very informative session that we've had, vote of thanks, and close the meeting. So for this particular meeting, the action points that really came up were, number one, we were reminded on the issue of public participation and how it should not be tokenistic, but involve people in the system, in governance all the time. We were also reminded on the question of partnership, and it was asked, is partnership between counties and national government systemic or based on the current political trends, which are so fluid? So we were reminded that systems should be made to ensure that that partnership is continuous and based on systems. The other thing was on revenue, and how we have statistics were given on how revenue has grown since 2013. And a key question was asked on whether that revenue is reflected when it is shared to the counties. So on the panel, we were reminded about the purpose of devolution and how so far devolution has made strides in meeting its purpose. And also you are reminded on how corruption is the key thing that is hampering the growth of devolution. And we were reminded that counties so far have been empowered, and a few gazette notices have been mentioned, and so far the ambiguities in terms of transfer of functions may no longer exist as we move. On sharing of revenue, we were reminded that it should not be an event, but a continuous process that is strengthened and participatory to improve that particular formula with time. And also you are reminded that funds that are sent to the counties should not be pigeonholed or fragmented, since it affects delivery of services. Also, an idea was fronted on, can we empower our counties further to ensure that they improve on on-source revenue, an idea of, can we give them power on taxation. Finally, on citizen voices, we were reminded that it should be intentional and participation should be intentional and collaborative, with an intent to ensure that it's not just collaborative, but ensure citizen influence decisions at the county level. Finally, I want to thank our panel. I want to thank our moderator for ensuring that we've had an insightful conversation. Thank the organizers of this particular panel, that is Bajeti Hub, Katiba Institute, Mzalendo Trust, where I work, and TISA. Before you leave, I have gifts for you, and I would like to welcome my colleagues to come and hand over the gifts to our panelists. And I won't forget you, people who participated, the participants in this particular session. Without you, the session would not have gone on. So thank you, asanteni sana. So I would like to start with Dr. Geshana. CPA Kithinji Kirago. Sonia. John Kenothia. And finally, our moderator, Arms. So asanteni sana, na kwa hayo mafupi nafunga huu mkutano. Asanteni.
Thank you. Let's appreciate them again, and let's appreciate even our vote of thanks. One final announcement as we rise up, because there's a group photo for the panelists. We are requested that tomorrow our sessions begin at 8 a.m. here in the main hall. There's going to be a very interesting plenum, so please plan to be here. And then for the program, there are QR codes around, so please just scan on them. Once you scan them, you'll be able to get all the details about the breakaway sessions and the program and all details. And finally, allow me to appreciate one very important person, Naomi. Naomi has been our COG contact for this breakaway session side event, and she's been very, very, very supportive. Thank you very much. I think we can join the other partners who are present. Just come and join us. We take a group photo together.